Hi, and welcome back to Drawing a Residential Building Permit Set. I'm Chris, an architect working out of the UK, and in this lesson we're diving into one of the most critical parts of your permit package, the existing and proposed floor plans. These drawings are the backbone of the entire set. They clearly show what's there today and how it will change once your project is complete. Done well, they make it effortless for reviewers to understand your intent and approve your permit without unnecessary back and forth. Here's what we'll cover together. Redrawing the existing plan using Rayon's walls, zones and openings so you have a precise foundation to work from. Organising with layers and canvases, aligning everything neatly so your drawings are clear and consistent. Developing the proposed plan, shaping your client's design vision, and then using Rayon's block library to add furniture and bring the space to life. Adding clarity with annotations, tags, notes, and dimensions to make sure every reviewer has the information that they need. And by the end of this lesson, you'll have both existing and proposed plans set up, ready to carry forward into the sections and elevations in Lesson 3. Everything will be demonstrated in Rayon.Design, the platform that I use to produce the entire course. It's quick, accurate, and built to take you all the way from sketches to presentation-ready permit sets in the browser. Best of all, it's free, so if you haven't already, create your account at Rayon.Design and grab the free permit set template linked below. Open it up, follow along, and adapt it to your own project or local permit requirements. So let's get started. So during the last lesson, we set the foundation for our permit set by creating sheets, importing the site, and the existing floor plans. Now it's time to start redesigning. We'll begin by recreating the existing plans in Rayon, a mandatory sheet for every permit, before building on them. Our project is a two-storey house where the clients want to revamp the arrangement of the upper floors, extending the master and the guest bedrooms. The ground floor arrangement remains untouched. As architects, it's our job to propose solutions that meet the client's needs, comply with code, stay feasible for construction, and of course fit the budget. Let's start recreating the existing plans. We've imported the file to scale last lesson, and now we can use them to create an accurate drawing to build upon. Let's get started. We're going to go back into Rayon. We're going to click on our building permit set where we left it last time. So you can see here we've got our site plan, we're in the model space, and we've got our CAD plans that we brought in. We imported the DWGs last time. So I'm going to make sure on the layers tab, so these should be locked and they're on the imported layer. And then I want to create a new layer down here, create a new layer, and we'll call that existing. We'll set it to active, and I'm going to put it behind so when I draw the walls I can still see the CAD information above. So in drawing the walls in Rayon we've got the wall tool. So if we go down here we've got wall, shortcut is W, and I'm just going to draw two walls. And that's because I can see from the plan there are two different wall types that are being used. You can see a thicker external wall and a thinner internal wall. So let's just measure these. So the thicker one is 230mm and the thinner one is 120mm. So let's set up our wall styles. So we can set that at 230. We can save the style and we can call it external wall. And I'm just going to change the color for clarity. And we'll change that back later to something a bit more aesthetically pleasing. 120mm for the internal one. We'll call that internal. And again, I'll just change the color. Let's go with green. And those are our two wall types set up. So then when I start to draw the wall, I can do pick a style and I can choose the external one. And that means when I draw, I know that I'm going to be drawing the right wall type. And I'll just do the same for the upstairs. So the upstairs, obviously, because it's within the pitch of the roof, we're cutting through at a certain height. And that's the sort of general convention for a floor plan. So we're cutting through the roof and we're seeing into that volume. So the external wall, again, we'll just go around the perimeter. And then we'll start with the internal. So again, I'll do the wall tool. I will pick my style. And you can see I'm continuing the walls over the door positions, and that's because we'll bring the doors in a second as a block. And you can see as the walls meet, they create a sort of chamfer at the corners. Similarly, let's just do the upstairs quickly. And I'm just using my space bar here to repeat the command basically, so we can speed this whole process up, and you'll find over time that it becomes quite a quick, obviously it snaps to 90 degrees perpendicular. Okay, so that's the internal and the external walls drawn, and we can see here on the existing, so let's just set another layer as active, and we can see that those are all sitting on the correct layer. And then if we turn off the imported layer, we can see the geometry that's been drawn. To draw the extent of the roof, we're just going to use some shapes. So in the shapes tool, you can go to rectangle, and I can just draw the extent of the roof form. Again, the roofs of the garage, for example. And again, that automatically goes on the existing layer. And just for clarity, we could separate the internal and external walls onto separate sublayers, which may be helpful later. So if I click on one of the internal walls, I can right click and do select similar. And I can say select same style. So by doing that, that selects all the internal walls that are on the same style. I can create a new layer. We'll call that internal. So that sits on that layer. So with that dragged into the existing, I can still turn that off, and I can still turn those off separately. Similarly, I can do the same thing with the external. So select same style. And now we have separated the external walls and the internal walls. With the walls drawn, I'll just start adding some of the elements like doors and windows. So we can go down here, next to the wall tool is the opening tool, and in the active block, we can double click on there and we can go into the library. So this will automatically pick an active block that we're basically placing into a wall. So we'll go for doors. So we'll select that, and then that will be activated on our opening tool. And you can see here that it will automatically host within the door. And then once we click, we can then change the direction as we see fit. And again, I can use the spacebar command. And it works exactly the same way with the windows. So again, we can go to opening, we can click on our active block, we can select a casement window, for example, and we can place that in. So we can alter the block, we can change its position to make it accurate to our survey information. So I'll go around the rest of the model and add in the rest of the windows and doors, but I'll also just show you the block library, which where you can import furniture in. So we'll just go to blocks, which is on the left hand side. We'll go to libraries. In the Rayon libraries, there's a whole host of existing blocks that are absolutely perfect. So once we found a block that works, we can either just drag into our space, we can position, and then we can rescale. And similarly, if I couldn't find the block that I wanted, I could just search for WC, for example, and I could find a toilet that makes sense. Okay, so I've just spent a little bit of time refining the drawing down. And now that we're starting to finalize the drawing, let's change the colors back to something a bit more aesthetically pleasing. So we can go back to our styles tab, and we can see down here, for example, under walls, we've got our external wall and our internal wall. So I'm going to change the color to sort of a mid-gray maybe, and you can see that any of the walls that are affected by that style, they automatically change. And similarly, I can change the style color of the internal, maybe make those a slightly lighter gray, for example, and you can see those change as well. And that's obviously really handy that if you've set the model up properly, if you go back in later, you can adjust things very quickly as you see fit. The other thing I can do at this point is to add some textures and tones to the actual spaces. So we can go to the zone tool, which is just down here below the wall tool. And for example, we can start filling the spaces. So this will basically look at the walls that have been created and create a zone that is bound by those walls. And that zone can have a fill or a texture. So we can have a solid color with a different level of opacity. We can have a gradient. So again, we can change that. We can change the colors that are in that gradient. We can have a texture. So we can upload a specific texture or look at other PNG files. We can have a hatch. We can change the pattern, or we can upload our own image. So let's go into hatch. So I'm going to put in a herringbone pattern, for that floor, and obviously I can change the opacity of that, so to knock it back so it sits comfortably amongst the rest of the walls, and I can do the same throughout the house. And again, I can change the scale of this. So for example, if I thought that those interesting patterned floor was actually too much, I can change the scale, and now it's a much finer scale. And similarly, I can do the same thing upstairs with the zone tool. You will also see that you can call the zones different things. So this is really handy when you're thinking about room names, for example. So you can change the name of these spaces. So this will be Master Suite, for example. And it also automatically gives you the area in the metric or the imperial that you choose. And again, I'll change this to maybe a straight plank. And again, maybe the scale is slightly smaller. And just like with the styles that we set up previously, the hatches within the zones can work in the same way. So I could just do a picker tool and say that that hatch wants to be exactly the same. The other thing I can do is with these shapes. So these shapes are the view of the roof that you're looking down onto. So I could add a texture and a color if I felt like. So for example, I can go into hatch and I can find something that looks like a shingle, for example. And I can rotate it as well. There we go. And again, I can just do the picker tool and that will do the same. And even with the roof plan that I've drawn, exactly the same premise. And this space is the chimney. So I could give that a solid fill, for example, and then that appears solid above that texture that I've just put in. I also just want to show you how you can do shadows, for example. So this also adds a bit of depth to the drawing. So again, we just go into a shape, or we could use a polyline, for example. Let's go for a polyline. So let's say the sun is coming in this direction. We can just set shadow here, and because I've used a polyline, it sees that as a continuous shape which we can add a fill to. So I'll add a solid fill, and then I'll knock the transparency back, maybe even 5%. I will take off the stroke, and then that starts to give it some depth. And we can do the same internally, for example. So, you know, I can use exactly the same tool, polyline. I can trace around the internal line of the space. And again, we're not looking for 100% accuracy with this. It's really just to give a sense of depth to a plan to help someone when they're reading it. Again, we can use the picker side, and then we have it. So you can see there, it just adds a bit of something to that plan, so you can distinguish the space inside from the walls. Okay, so you can see here I've finalized the textures, added the shadows as we discussed. We've got all the room tags with those areas on, and I've added a brown tone to the roof just to highlight it as an external space, which is different from the internal. And you can see these sort of annotation crosses, and these are basically the voids in the the sides of the roof, which are accessible for storage, and with the volume of the bedroom spaces in between. So that consists of our existing floor plan sets. What we want to do now is just to lock them down, because now they're complete, we don't want to alter them, we want to keep them as they are. And the best way to do this is to make them into a block. So I can select everything that I want, and I'll right click and I'll go to block, and similarly do that with each of the plans. And then you can see here in the right hand side, you can see the block instance. And then we'll also be able to see them in the list of blocks on the left hand side. So you can see there they start to appear as a block that I could drag in again if I wanted to. And to keep things neat and tidy, I'm just going to put a note in the model space for existing drawings. I'll scale that up so we can see it, and then I'll just create a box around it. Now with the existing floor plans drawn and fixed, we can now get started drawing up our proposal. As mentioned before, we're going to be renovating the upstairs of the property to provide a high quality master suite with ensuite bathroom and a guest bedroom with dressing and study area. So let's get started. Now I'm going to duplicate that to be the proposed drawings now. So we're going to be focusing our time on the first floor. So I'm going to unblock this one because then I can edit it. So now if I make a change to that drawing, it doesn't affect the blocked version of the existing floor plan. Now, for the sake of working on the drawing, I want to get rid of the shadows, just clean the drawing back up. I could also just turn these off if I wanted to. Okay, with a clean drawing, now we just want to think about the design. Obviously, the actual development of the design has kind of gone on. I've been speaking with the client, we've discussed what they want to achieve. We've gone through a number of iterations and sketches and ended on providing a new bathroom to the master suite and a dressing space to the guest bedroom within some dormers. And then opening up the rest of the space into the roof. So I just want to start creating some guidelines. So guidelines are really helpful when you're starting to mass things out. And you can create a number of them. They obviously all sit kind of perpendicular and parallel on the page and helps you kind of think and align things as you go. So I just want to create 2 either end and then create 1 in the center of my plan. And to set the outside dimension of the dormers, I want to bring the roof edge in by 600mm here, and then again create some guidelines vertically, and you can see they're just change between vertical and horizontal, and you can even align it to a face if you wanted to. So again, we want to bring the face of the dormer in by 600mm, and we want to align the new face of the bathroom wall to this existing wall. So that's the space we have to play around with. And then the next step is to try and think about the 2 dormers that we're going to be creating. They want to be symmetrical within that side elevation. So the one restricting factor you'll notice is the stairs. So the stairs are staying. And the position of the stairs isn't central within the space. So, for example, we know that given our existing stair position, the furthest over the inside of our dormer can be is on this line, because we don't want to change this wall. So what I want to do is basically set that and mirror that about the center of the line of the building, and then that sets my wall line for the other dormer. So with those set up, we'll start drawing the walls in. So I'm going to do 1 and 2 wall types. And just as we did before, we're going to think about the thickness of the walls and set them up as wall types. So I'm going to create a new style. We'll call that dormer wall. Make it a funky color. And we'll say maybe it's 350mm thick. Similarly, we'll set a 150 wall, and we'll call that internal. And then when we start drawing our walls, obviously we can use our picker style, we'll pick that one, and then we can start drawing from there. So I can then just follow the guidelines that I've created. So that's our dormer wall line, and we can obviously then again mirror, and we can see they're both 600mm off of the edge, and they're sitting centrally within that elevation. Now again, we want to demolish these internal wall lines, and then we can draw the internal line of the wall, and again we can change our wall type to this yellow one. We can set obviously the internal line to our guideline, and then we can start drawing the internal face of the wall. So you can see there, that's basically creating the volume of the dormer, and then we'll be removing this aspect of roof. So I'm just going to pull this part of roof back for the sake of the drawing, and then fill in those edges. And you can see here that the rectangle that's formed the visible roof edge now needs to be adjusted. So one really helpful thing is that you can add points to the path. So having just double clicked on that, I can add points to this line, and that means I can take it around those corners as I need to. So you just click on those, click on the line, and add those points in. we go. Nice and neat and tidy. So that's the base of the dormers set. And now we're going to demolish the other area of eaves for the roof. So this will then open up that space and have the sort of pitch of the roof coming down with enough height for you to put your headboard up against. And we're just going to put 2 walls in here and here to then block off that chimney space. Okay, with the outline of the volume set, we can now start thinking about the different spaces that we're creating. So the ensuite space and the dressing room space. So let's take the dressing room to start with. And I wanted to insert some wardrobes. Obviously very key for our dressing space. And again, the arrangement that we've agreed with the client is to have 2 sets of wardrobes, a his and hers, and a central area in the middle, and then we'd have a vanity table in between. And in terms of that arrangement, I really like the idea of having a single window in the center, have some light on your face, and then a single sliding door, ideally glazed, that adds some borrowed light into that space. So with that in mind, we can go to the opening tool. I can find a simple window here. We can adjust that down so it doesn't get blocked by the wardrobes. And then again, we can do the same with opening. We can double click on here. I'll go into library and I'll search for pocket door. Let's go for the first one. You select, and then there we go. So we've got a nice, neat, tidy pocket door, some glazing there, and providing borrowed light into that dressing room. And that works very neatly for our bathroom idea as well. And I'll do the same with the door and the window. So with the shower, for example, we can bring a shower in. So that has a 700 shower. Place the window. Exactly the same thing with the door. And maybe with this area we could create a little niche for the shower. So we could set that back, and we could use that back portion for any pipe work or supply that the shower needs. And similarly, we could do the same thing on the other side. We could set that back by, say, 300, and we create a little storage niche above the WC, and then we can have a concealed cistern below that. So I'll drag in a close to the wall WC. I can adjust the position of the toilet roll. And then we'll just put a rectangle to indicate the above the cistern aspect. Put a slightly off-white feel to it. And obviously a really nice thing is not to see the toilet straight away when you enter the space. And then we just need a basin, so suitable. So again, similar to what we've done with the dressing table, having the basin centrally to the window, having a glazed sliding pocket door, having that sort of visual link would be lovely. And again, we can place below there. So that's our very basic arrangement for the ensuite space. And again, just like all of these things, I can add in a zone. So you'll see here, for example, and because the zone is reading the walls, it tries to fill the whole space. Whereas you can use a zone divider tool, which is just down here, and you can add a division to that space, and that means it basically segments that space and no longer sees it as the full element, which means that the pattern will feel where we want it to be. So just like this, we could change that pattern to something a bit more like we would have in the bathroom, maybe some small tiles. I can change the scale. Perfect. And similarly in the dressing area, I can change the zone divider, so make that pattern sit below only that aspect of floor, change the pattern. There we go. And obviously we can change the name of those rooms. So those are the two new elements. And one other thing which would be good to make the most of, because in terms of the geometries, the roof is pitching down, you know, we're right in the pitch of the roof. Obviously the gables are on the two ends of the house, and the dormers, we're creating a sort of rectilinear space. But in these eaves space, this aspect is actually still quite decent to use. So maybe we could put another wardrobe in there. So let's just find a small wardrobe. Okay, and we can stretch that to fit within that space. Okay, and then that becomes a void space. So I think we're really trying to maximize any additional space we can get in these bedrooms. So now on to the actual main bedroom spaces. So we've got the master bedroom at the top and the guest bedroom below. And just in terms of the arrangement, the logical place for the bed is obviously on the back wall as you come in. So we'll find a generous double bed. Bring that in, and that sits perfectly on that back wall. Maybe we'll have a dresser on this wall in this corner. So you can see the block library has thousands of elements which are incredibly helpful. You can just drag and drop them. You know that they're all to scale. You know they're going to look good when you put them on the drawings and sit well in the context. The Rayon block library really is a godsend. So that's the master suite. I think that works really well, nice and neat. And similarly, we'll just add a double bed to the guest room, something slightly less generous, and then maybe a little chair in the corner. Okay, that looks good. And then we can just finish it off by putting a zone in each of these spaces. And again, we can change that hatch. And I can even pick a style based on the one I've just agreed. And then we can change the name. So guest bedroom and master bedroom. So that's all looking good. I'll just get rid of these guidelines now that they've served their purpose. And now that the color of the walls have served their purpose, I'm just going to go back in, edit the style, and use something a bit more fitting. There we go. Nice and neat. And I think that works really well. Okay, so I've just spent a little bit more time adding the shadows and refining the layouts and getting it just right. So here is the first floor. I think that looks really good. And I've just added the outline of the dormers, the pitch roofs of them on the roof plan as well. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is highlight the differences between the two plans, because I know that I want to show them on a sheet where we've got the existing and the proposed next to each other. This is something that will really help your permit set because it communicates the differences and it stops ambiguity. It helps people understand what's going on, basically, what you're asking permission for. So we want to be highlighting what walls, what structures are new and which are being demolished in the existing. So we'll create two rectangles. And we want to make one red and one blue. So we go for one red and one blue. And we've got our existing plan down here, and we've got our proposed plan here. Now we want to make sure that we're setting these as sort of semi-transparent, and I want to remove the fill. So again, set that as maybe 40%, remove the fill, and then save as a style, proposed, and we'll save this one as demolished. And I'm just going to create a new layer. We'll call that overlay, because I want these things to sit on the surface. I'll just make sure they are on overlay. And then it's just a case of highlighting which aspects are new. And you could do this as elements like this, or you could do a polyline, for example. So we could say here, for example, and that fill is following. Similarly with this aspect, and again we can use the style picker for the overlay, and we could do the same below. So again, we'll set a polyline, and then with the existing, obviously that is in a red color, we're going to be demolishing. So we're basically taking out all of these areas here, this little storage cupboard here, and again in this section. So hopefully that very clearly communicates what's going, and then what's coming in its space. I just don't want to forget those two little walls here either. Just make sure I grab these. And then the final aspect is adding some dimensions. So I'll do some room dimensions and then some overall dimensions. So to add a dimension, we'll just set one up first. So it's just about clicking those 2 points and then dragging the line out. And just like everything else in Rayon, I can set up a style. So I'm going to set these as red. I'll set this as red text. Maybe the text should be a bit bigger. We can set the stroke as red as well. We can make the heads a bit larger. That looks good. And then again, I can save that as a style. So I'll have that as dimension. And then when I dimension this again, I can just do the style picker, and that will do that. Exactly the same thing with the one above. And then just make sure we pick the style. So there we go. Dimensions added, and now they're almost ready to go on the sheet. Okay, so now that we have finalized the drawings, added shadows, textures and furniture, and now added annotations, we're going to get these onto a sheet. Okay, so we've now got our drawings all set. So we've got our existing plan here with our shadows, our details, our annotations, everything set perfectly. And similarly below, we've got our proposed. So again, we've got our textures, we've got our furniture, we've got our annotations and our color coding on that. So they're all ready to go onto sheets. Just like before, we've got our paper canvas and our model canvas. So I'm going to jump over to the paper canvas, and this is how we left it last time. So those 3 sheets that we set up. So now we're going to create a new page. So we'll go here, we'll align it nicely, we'll set an A3, and I'm going to copy across the drawing sheet from last time because this is a drawing. So let's put it on a nice drawing sheet. I'm just going to put this in half because I know I want to have both plans on this same sheet so we can look at the before and after. We'll go to new, we'll go to view, and we'll find our existing and proposed plans. So you can see here, this is our proposed. So I'm going to set the scale to 1:50, and Then I'm going to press Command and I'm going to crop the view. So that's our proposed view set, and I can also just copy this across. So then I know my frame is the right size, and I can bring in my existing view. And again, I can set my scale to 1:50. I can navigate my window so it looks very similar. And the last thing I want to do is just to set up a guideline so I know that my sheet is aligned, as there's nothing worse than putting a sheet on a page that isn't aligned. There we go. So now we know both those align. I can get rid of that guideline, get rid of this one. And then we have our existing and our proposed sitting next to each other. They're color coded so they can clearly see what's being demolished and what's being proposed. And the whole idea behind this is that whoever's looking at your permit drawing, whoever's in the council or your jurisdiction, will be shown very clearly and hopefully speed up the process to understand what you're asking for. Now that we've set these on the drawing sheet, the last few things I want to do is add some titles and a key. So I can add some text. So we'll call this existing first floor plan, demolition, and I will just copy across and we'll change this to proposed. We'll call that construction maybe. And we can change the size of that text. So just like every other aspect, in the Style tab, I can change the title to be larger. I can change the color, maybe make that slightly gray. And then I can create a style out of that, and I'll call that one heading as an example. And then I can pick a style and use that one for the next heading. And similarly, I want to create a key. So I'm just going to copy that text across over to here. Change the text to key, and I obviously want to show what the red and the blue colors mean. So I'll just copy this down, and I want to detach that style and then create a new style. So we'll say that's slightly smaller. We'll call this one sub heading, and we'll say one is proposed and one is demolished. So just move these over slightly. I can then go to the shape tool, get a rectangle, put that in there, copy it. And with the style picker tool, I can even pick the style of the drawing I'm referencing. So I can do that, and I can do that. And then I know that the colors are exactly right. There's no room for confusion. And that's your drawing set up. Nice, neat, tidy, very, very clear. Obviously they fit nicely on a page. They're at a good scale, and they communicate clearly what you have and what you're trying to achieve. Obviously moving forward, we can use the existing and proposed floor plans as we see fit. So we can create smaller scale versions of these to be read in conjunction with the sections and the elevations that we're going to be drawing next time. That's a wrap for lesson 2 of drawing a residential building permit set. By now, you've created the existing and the proposed floor plans, the backbone of your entire permit set. Getting this step right means smoother reviews, fewer revisions, and a solid base for every drawing that follows. Now remember, build accuracy first, organize for clarity, and communicate change clearly. And don't forget, you can use the free editable permit set template linked below. It's your shortcut for consistent, professional drawings that you can adapt to any project. If today's lesson helped simplify your workflow, drop a comment and share what you'll be applying in your own projects. And of course, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next lesson. Up next, we'll be taking these plans vertically, turning them into existing and proposed sections and elevations that show your design in the full context. Until then, keep designing smarter, not harder. See you in lesson 3.